My name is Carol Hobbs. I teach math here at a local university in Pensacola, Florida, and I've been helping my grandson, who's in now 7th grade, with his Common Core math. So I understand there's so many parents having difficulty with Common Core, so I decided that I'll put some YouTube videos out to help you, the parent, help your child. You know your child best. And the thing about math is the more you understand about the world, the easier math should be. We kind of forget when we're in class that we should bring everything we know from outside of the classroom into the classroom to help us understand what's happening and to help us make those necessary connections to help us remember what it is we are supposed to retain. So, at this point, it appears that my grandson is doing a lot with, in 7th grade, this is 7th grade now, he's doing a lot with graphs. And they're pretty much line graphs at this point. So I thought I would do a couple of videos on line graphs. And I'm using Common Core material. Common Core material. So, this first is a step-by-step lesson that I have obtained a software online to help me help you help your child. So, Johnny purchased nuts. He created a graph to determine if the quantity of nuts and price are proportional for each serving size listed in the table. If the quantities are proportional, what is the constant of proportionality or unit rate that defines the relationship? Now, the constant of proportionality is just a number that will be in front of a variable, okay? And that number is the number that you would use all the time, and when you multiply it by whatever the quantity, X, Y, Z, A, B, C, whatever, because remember, variables can be anything from A through Z. So here we are to explain how the constant of proportionality was determined and how it relates to both the table and the graph. Okay? So, the table has pounds and price. So let's say the pound would be your x-axis and the price would be your y-axis. Okay? So we have 2, 4, 6, and 8. That's our x values. So that's 2 pounds, 4 pounds, 6 pounds, and 8 pounds. Oh. The 8 is not showing. I am an awful person, aren't I? Okay, so let's put the 8 in here so you guys can see what's going on. Alright, so that's the pounds. So the price for 2 pounds is, let's say, $4. 4 pounds, $8. 6 pounds, $12. And 8 pounds, $16. Well, as a parent, you already recognize the relationship because you're in the store all the time, but your child is not doing that. So, you know that the price per pound is $2 per pound, just based on the fact that 2 times 2 is 4, 2 times 4 is 8, 2 times 6 is 12, and 2 times 8 is 16. You can show your child this video as well, but it might be better if you help them, because that'll help you a little bit too with the math. So, we know, and I guess you can recall, I'm not going to guess, I know that most of us can recall from high school the equation y equals mx plus b. That's the slope and y-intercept equation form of an equation of a line. Now, notice the y and the x are still there, because once you know what the slope of the line is, in this case I think it would be 2, and if you know the y-intercept, you have that information. Whatever x is, once you identify the variable, the value of the variable x, substitute it into that equation, you will get y. So let's confirm that. Once again, I first want you to see the graph. It is a line. They connected all the dots, starting with I can get there, starting with 0, 0. Then they've got, this got to be, these are pounds, so this has to be 4, 6, 4, 8, 12, and 16. It's not listed on here, so I will write it. And that is one thing that is important regarding a graph. There must be consistency with your x and your y axis. So there must be consistency with your y values, and notice each line or tick is 4. So 4, 8, 12, and 16 to correspond with my graph. And on the x-axis, I have 2, 0, 2, 4, 6, and 8. Corresponds with my x values on my table. So we are told to first, these are guided instructions, so they kind of give your students step by step. And I'm going to follow them because I'm not crazy. So the first thing we are to do is to find m. Look at the table and notice that every time the x term goes up by 2, the y term goes up by 4. This means that m is equal to 2. Now, yes, I can appreciate that, but you guys that were in high school before, you know there was another way of determining the slope. And the farther apart the points are, the better your value of the slope would be. So we're going to create, I'm going to do something a little different from what they're asking you to do, and I'll come back to this. But the first thing we're going to do is, and which is what they're doing, on the next page, they are finding an equation of a line. So I'm going to help you, help your child find an equation of a line. So we have 2 points here. We have x value is 2, y value is 4, and we also have the point the x value is 8, the y value is 16. We've already said, and the information on the sheet confirms that the slope is 2. So let's try that. Remember that m stands for slope. If you will recall on the equation that I wrote, y equals mx plus b, m stands for slope and b stands for the y-intercept. So y equals m, the slope, x, plus b, the y-intercept. So if you will recall, the slope equation, excuse me, is y sub 2 minus y sub 1 over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. It could also be the same, we can reverse that process. Y sub 1 minus y sub 2 over x sub 1 minus x sub 2. The thing to remember with this is that, notice here I have the second point, the y over the x, minus the first point, the y over the x. With the second version of this equation, I have the first point, y over the x, minus the second point, y over the x. You should get the exact same value, except if something is negative. With this version, the negative may be on top, but with this version, the negative sign will be on the bottom. But recall this, it doesn't matter whether the negative is in the center of your fraction or the negative is at the top of the fraction or the negative is at the bottom of the fraction. It doesn't matter. The entire fraction is a negative value, okay? So, since we are so used to using y sub 2 minus y sub 1 over x sub 2 minus x sub 1, I'm going to use that particular equation. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is identify my point. So this would be point 1, and this will be point 2. Okay? So what I'm doing is not only good for middle school and high school students, but college students as well, because I do teach college algebra. All right. So this 16, in your point is always x and then y. How can I possibly remember that? Easy. X comes before y in the alphabet. So on your point, it would be x versus y. And now, if you're using different variables, you have to specify which variable is your horizontal line on the graph, which variable represents the horizontal values, and which variable represents the vertical values, or your y values, okay? So, we have y sub 2 is 16 minus, that's already in the equation, y sub 1 is 4 over x sub 2 rather, which is 8, minus x sub 1, which is 2. So now we have 16 minus 4 is 12, 8 minus 2 is 6. The answer is 2. Now, the difference between what I've just done and what Common Core is doing is trying to get the students to think a little more about what's happening and what's going on, so that just by looking at what's happening in their table, they can see that the slope would be 2. Because whatever I put here, I have to multiply that by 2. All right? So, let's continue. Now we have confirmed that our slope is 2, so let's go on. Now that our slope is 2, we need to, and we've seen this, so I can get rid of this 2. I need the space. And one of these days I'll get a bigger board. But right now, this is good for me. Okay, so we know that m is 2. Remember, our equation is y equals mx plus b, and I said that is slope intercept form that will represent an equation of a line. So I have m, I need b, because if you recall, y and x must be part of the final equation. So, how would we find b? Well, there's another equation, and it's called the point-slope form of the equation, or we can use the slope-intercept form. Since in class, they haven't gotten to the point slope form yet. I'm going to use the slope intercept form. Now, if you will recall, one of the points was 2 and 4. That was point 1. I will always use the smallest values because I have to do the calculations. And the smaller the numbers are, the easier it is for me to add, subtract, multiply, and divide. Okay? So, we know our slope is 2. And we have this point. I'm going to substitute this point, 2 for x and 4 for y, into my slope-intercept form of an equation of a line. I'm going to substitute that in with my slope. So that will give me y, m, and x. Then I can solve for b. I can solve for b. So my y is 4, and that equals m is 2 times, and I'm going to use parentheses to represent times. 2 times my x is 2 plus b. So 4 equals 4 plus b. I'm still solving for b, but I have a 4 on the same side. What am I going to do with that 4? I'm going to subtract it because it's positive. So to cancel it, I must subtract it. Well, we all know, and you must implore this with your children. You must tell your child, remember, whatever you do to one side of the equation, you must do the same thing to the other side of the equation. So if I subtract 4 from the right side of this equation, I must subtract 4 from the left side of this equation. So the 4's cancel on the right side, and oh my goodness, they canceled on the left too. 4 minus 4 is 0, so that tells me that b is 0. Now that I know m and I know b, that's all I need to substitute into this equation. So y equals m is 2, x, b is 0 plus 0. And we generally, by convention, it's okay, there's nothing wrong with it, but we generally do not leave the 0. So my final equation is y equals 2x. So we have created an equation of a line for this particular problem. Now, confirming, you see it on the back? There it is. Y equals 2x. All right? And they use the slope-intercept form just as I did. I didn't pay attention to that. I should have. It made my life easier, wouldn't it? At some point, we'll talk about the point-slope form, but that's fine. You can always use this form to find an equation of a line. So, hey guys, thank you for listening, and I'll see you soon. Bye.